Hey guys, it's Mel. Welcome to my channel. And welcome to my April wrap-up. I'm actually filming this on the 1st of May, although you guys won't see this for about 5 or 6 days. And I do actually have one book which I'm counting as April, even though I finished it this morning, but I finished the last 200 pages this morning. So I feel like that makes it an April. Here I am in my back garden again. Quite a few of you commented on how much you liked my garden when I filmed here for my 100 subscribers celebration. So I thought that I would do some filming here again. Right, so I need to get out my reading planner because it's got all my notes of the books that I've read and everything. So as you probably know by now, I'm not actually giving star ratings, so I won't be ranking the books. I'm just going to be talking about them in the order that I've written them down here. So first of all, I'm going to start with Skyward by Sanderson. So I read this one with my friend Hayley from Hayley Reads. Hayley and I have been buddy reading for the last couple of months. Well, since the beginning of this year, so last 4 months. Had to think about that then. Feels like it's been a lot longer. Anyway, and yeah, so we chose to read Skyward by Sanderson. So for those people that don't know, this is the first in his science fiction young adult duology. It is set on the planet of, well, the people that live on the planet call it detritus. So it's set on detritus, and it's about a battle between humans and an alien race that they call the Krell. So we start out with Spencer trying to get into flight school, and it's about her struggles to get into flight school, some things that she learns about herself and about the Krell and about the human race in general. I really enjoyed this book. I think that it was incredibly well written. I think that it was really clever and really interesting and ingenious. It was a very interesting take on humanity and the world and our sorry, the wind's picking up. Been a bit gusty, so I'm just going to let it die down. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's a really interesting take on our opinions and our expectations of ourselves as humanity, and as the way that we live our lives and the way that we interact with other species and each other. I think the science fiction is a really great way of exploring that. I haven't read a huge amount of science fiction, but I have watched quite a bit of science fiction, and I always like the way that it's used as a vehicle to explore humanity and how we live and what we do and our priorities, which is similar to fantasy as well, which is another thing I love about fantasy. Anyway, so Skyward, it's definitely, this wind I think is going to be a bit all over the place. I'm really hoping that I can, oh, and now it's raining on me. God damn it. I've retreated to our little atrium, which still has the little gardeny parts. I could of course just wait until it stops raining. It is Tasmania, and the old saying, don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, kind of works here, but it looks like it's going to be fairly intermittent throughout the rest of the day. So yeah, I think I'd be running backwards and forwards, so atrium it is. Perhaps next time. Anyway, so that was Skyward. Now we have my absolute favourite read so far this year, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I had to take the dust jacket off just now because it got quite wet in the coming back in, unfortunately, so it's sitting somewhere to dry. But I still like this cover. I think it's really pretty, and the spine as well. I actually filmed a rave review. Basically, the minute I finished this book, I couldn't wait to talk about it. So I will link the video in the description below and in the little card. Go and check it out for more details on my thoughts of the book. To give you a very brief synopsis, those of you that haven't heard of this book or watched that video, it's set in modern day Yale, and it is about the 8 houses of Yale, which are kind of fraternity, sorority type houses, but they are actually occult houses, and the 9th house, which is the house that is charged with keeping track of those houses, making sure that they are not doing anything that will upset the balance and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of magic, there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of great action and a lot of danger and ghosts and paranormal and all that sort of thing in this book. I want to say that there are quite a few trigger warnings for this book. So it deals with abuse, it deals with drug abuse, it deals with neglect of children, it deals with violence, it deals with assault, it deals with sexual assault. So I definitely recommend that you just bear that in mind when you go to read this book. If any of those things are a trigger for you, then maybe it's not the book for you. But if you like paranormal urban fantasy, if you like hard-hitting subjects written in a really thoughtful and entertaining and interesting way, then I definitely recommend this book. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was well paced. I thought that the characters were well developed and well written, particularly the main character Alex. I really like the way that it swaps backwards and forwards between times. So we have the present, we have the past from about 9 months ago or so, and then we have a few years ago, and you learn a lot more about Alex and her history and what sort of happened to her and how she wound up where she is, as well as how the occult works and what the houses in Yale are really up to. So there's a lot of intrigue and mystery, and yeah, I just thought that it was fantastic, and I'm really excited to read some more of Leigh Bardugo's work. I've not read any of her work, haven't read the Grishaverse, anything from the Grishaverse or anything like that, so I'm looking forward to picking those up at some point. Now we have The Nowhere Child. I thought this was a fantastic book as well. I did talk about this in my 24-hour reading challenge video, so again I will link that in the description below and in the eye just here. So go check that out if you want more detailed thoughts from me. Yeah, I thought this was a really clever, well-written mystery novel. It's The Nowhere Child, by Christian White. It is his debut book, and I thought that he did a great job. So it tells the story from two different perspectives. So we get the timeline where the main character Kim has just been confronted with the possibility that she is not in fact who she thinks she is, but she is a child, or the grown-up version of a child that went missing in the States in, it's like 15 years ago or something like that. So it's her trying to figure out if that's true or not and meet with those people who are purportedly her family and deal with the situation if that's true and what that means for her actual family and her life. And then we also follow the family after Kim's disappearance, or Sammy as she was called back then. So it follows the family as they deal with Sammy's disappearance and the ramifications of that, and the various different secrets and things that you don't know about the family that they don't know about each other that yeah, they're now having to deal with. So I thought that it was really well written, really well paced. I thought that it was quite believable in terms of the action. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it. So that was The Nowhere Child by Christian White. Then we have Just a Girl by Jackie French. I actually read this for the Eurovision-a-thon readathon, so I'm not going to go into any detail about this because I'm planning on doing a Eurovision-a-thon review wrap-up as well at the end, and it doesn't finish till the 16th of May, so I'll go into more detail about that then, but just so you know that I did read that as well. That was Just a Girl by Jackie French. The next book that I want to show you is another book that I read for the Eurovision-a-thon, so again I'll just show it to you and I'll go into more detail in my Eurovision-a-thon wrap-up, and that is The Bronze Horseman by Paullina Simmons. And the next three books I read either on my ebook or online, so I'll put images of them just here. So we have City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. So City of Bones, for those of you that don't know, City of Bones is the first in the Mortal Instruments series, which is in the Shadow Hunters universe, written by Cassandra Clare. I believe it was her first book. I do have a few more details about what I thought of that, again in my 24-hour reading challenge that is linked below. I also did do a review over on Goodreads, so I will link that review below if you want to hear more of my thoughts. But I'll just say for now that pretty solid, in the middle of the road for me. I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, it was reasonably enjoyable. I enjoyed my time reading it. I wouldn't say that Cassandra Clare has become a favourite of mine at all, but I certainly am planning on reading some more of her works. In fact, Connor, who I read this book with from Connor Booktube, and I are planning on reading City of Ashes next week, so you'll hear more of my thoughts about Cassandra Clare as I go along. But yeah, so that was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. And then we have We Swallow the Air by Tara June Winch. Okay, so this book is quite heavy, quite hard-hitting. It follows a young girl, late 80s, early 90s, I believe, and it follows her experience of her life. So her mother dies and she and her brother are forced to live with her aunt. However, her aunt is an alcoholic and has gambling addiction as well. So their lives aren't great, so they're sort of forced out into the greater world, and this young girl, whose name I've actually completely forgotten, goes off to, makes her way to Sydney, to the block in Redfern. If you know anything about Sydney or Aboriginal people in Australia, then you know that the block is very famous from that time period as being an area where Australian Aboriginal people were sort of forced into and to live in what amounted to slums in those days. There was a lot of alcoholism, there was a lot of drug abuse, there was a lot of physical and verbal abuse that happened within those sort of tenements, and it was very sad, really, and an example of what racism does to a country and a society. And yeah, so it was very hard-hitting, and there was a lot of stuff that I now know that I didn't know before about Redfern. I've actually lived in Redfern, so it was good to know more about that part of history and about that situation. I feel like because I am not Australian Aboriginal, I have no experience of living their experience. It's very difficult for me to talk about. I'm not sure what is sort of something that is okay for me to talk about, what is not, so I won't go into any more detail, but I definitely recommend it if you can handle those sort of hard-hitting subjects. Again, very major trigger warnings, but if you can handle them and you want to know more, yeah, I highly recommend that book. And lastly, for something nice and light, sort of, I read Heartstopper by Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. I actually read this online, so I can't show you the book. I read the online webcomic version. Like I said, it was quite light and happy and easygoing, except for the very end, and there was a little bit of a trigger warning for that, to do with assault. But I do like that Alice Oseman actually said that in the comic itself. She sort of gave a little warning to say that if you find this topic triggering, then don't read this particular section. But it does get dealt with at the end of the comic, so everything ends up okay. Again, if you don't know, it's quite popular on the Booktonet in general, but it is about two young boys who meet in American high school and fall in love, essentially. At least I think that is where it's going. That's not where I'm up to. I only finished Volume 1, but yeah, it was really sweet. It felt like a really nice way to introduce myself to the sort of way of reading comics, which I talk about in my audiobook and comic book journey video, which I will link below as well and also in the eye. But yeah, it felt like a really nice way of sort of introducing myself to that way of reading, where I have to take the time to look at the pictures as well as read the text, because as I've said in that video, I am such a text-based reader that I struggle with graphic novels and cartoon comics because it's not an experience that I'm used to. So yeah, so that was Heartstopper Volume 1 by Alice Oseman. I will give you just a couple of stats in a moment, but before I do that, I will also just say that I am currently in the middle of reading The Aeneid by Virgil, which again is for the Eurovision-a-thon, so I will talk about that more in that wrap-up. And I am also in the middle of reading The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave, which again is for Eurovision-a-thon, so again I will talk about that in that wrap-up. I also started this month reading Trevor Noah, or listening to Trevor Noah on audiobook, his first book, Born a Crime. I have not finished that yet. I kind of put it on hold while I was doing the Eurovision-a-thon, and will probably remain on hold while I do the Mental Health-a-thon and the Because We Can Read-a-thon in May. However, I am enjoying that. I think that it's really interesting to listen to. I really like Trevor Noah as a person and as a comedian, so I'm enjoying hearing more about his life. Okay, so those stats. Like I said, I don't do star ratings, so I won't give you my stats. So, I read one middle grade book, which was Just a Girl. I read 3 young adult books, and they were Skyward, City of Bones, and Heartstopper Volume 1. And I read 4 adult books, and that they were The Bronze Horseman, Ninth House, The Nowhere Child, and We Swallow the Air. 2 of those were contemporary, 2 of those were historical fiction, 2 of those were urban fantasy, paranormal, 1 was mystery, 1 was sci-fi, and the books that I'm still reading, 1 is a memoir, 1 is historical fiction, and 1 is a classic from ancient Greece. Italy, I should say, ancient Italy. Anyway guys, that is my wrap up for the month of April. I'd love to know what you read during the month of April, so comment below and let me know. If you've read any of the books that I read, I'd love to know what you thought of them, and if you are planning on reading any of those books, I'd also love to know that as well. So please comment below with anything that you'd like to tell me. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.